Metroid Prime. This is a game that I've wanted to play for a long time, but was always very hesitant to get into because I guess I'm a bit of a Metroid purist. I always thought that the first-person perspective was going to take away something, or at least change the tone and the feeling of Metroid in a way that I probably wouldn't enjoy, and so, for 15 years now, never really got into it. I did buy it once for my GameCube, and I tried to play it a little bit, but I wasn't much of a Metroid fan at that point. I just got it because a bunch of friends had recommended it to me, and the fact that it wasn't dual analog turned me off almost instantly, and I never put it back on again. Until last week, when I finally dug out my copy of Metroid Prime Trilogy for the Wii that I bought for $80, like 2 weeks before they re-released it and the price dropped dramatically, which I will never forgive myself for. Popped it into my Wii U and figured I'd give the game a fair shake since I had just finished Samus Returns and was craving more Metroid, and I don't feel like I can go back to Super at this point just because Samus Returns was just the epitome, the perfect distillation of everything that's good about 2D Metroid, and now that I've done countering, I can never go back! So let's try something completely different. Surprisingly good. The motion controls were kind of meh in the beginning, but I've gotten used to them. I was, like I said, very, very concerned about the switch to 3D. Now, not a big deal. Feeling of exploration, still there, still feels like a Metroid game. However, there's one thing about the move to 3D that I don't really find bad, but just an interesting observation I thought as I'm going through the game. I'm not done with Prime yet, and I still have Prime 2 and Prime 3 to get through, so I got a lot of work ahead of me before Prime 4 drops on the Switch, which I still need to get a Switch. So I got a lot of Metroid Prime ahead of me. But just based on my, I want to say 15, I think now, hours of game time, and I play games very slowly, so that's probably like 6 hours in normal time. There's one thing I've noticed that's made it different from regular Metroid, or something that the move to 3D has made a bit more convoluted that was a little bit more simplistic in the 2D Metroids, and maybe that's going to get me labeled a casual, but you know what? I am a casual gamer. So there you go. Hate me all you want for that. Flame me in the comments, that's fine. I got other things to do in my life besides game, but I still like gaming. The thing that the move to 3D has made, I don't want to say more difficult, but just kind of more convoluted, is going back and finding items. The interesting thing about 2D Metroid is that because it's a side-scroller, and because it's kind of based on this grid system, that's the way the map's laid out, when you find certain areas that you need to go back to later to get power-ups or to get new things or open new paths, at least for me, it's very easy to kind of like compartmentalize those in your mind. Like you can recall things rather simplistically because of the flat 2D side-scrolling perspective. I just find it easier to kind of like mentally recall where I've seen these things, or like it's even probably a better example is it's much more clear where certain aspects are that require moves. Oh god, I know what I want to say, but it's very hard to explain with actual words. Because it's two-dimensional, the map is more clear in what it wants you to do. Let's try going that way. Where power bombs are needed, where super missiles are needed, where blocks probably can be broken, where a high jump is needed, for example. It's much more obvious because the map is 2D. When it's 3D, when you gain that extra dimension, it becomes much more difficult to find where secrets are, or to even like recall on the map where things are. Because the map in Prime is bigger than any of the 2D Metroids. And because you're moving around in all directions, you got that Z space. I remember trying to find this one room, like I remembered I needed this room where the grappling hook was, and I thought it was in one part of the map, it was actually in another, and it's just, I'm finding it more difficult to navigate the world. It's hard to like make a mental picture of it, because now I've got to worry about 3 dimensions instead of 2. Maybe that makes sense. Maybe that's a good way of phrasing it. The world clearly is more complicated because it's made out of polygons instead of pixels, and because of that, being able to quickly retraverse places where I know something is, like to mentally recall where it is, becomes more complicated because you have to keep in mind 3 dimensions instead of just 2. There you go. That's what it is. That I find to be a bit more difficult. I found playing through Zero Mission and then Samus Returns, even ignoring the fact that like the Samus Return maps tells you where the power-ups are, even just looking at the map and the layout of it, I could quickly recall like, yeah, that's that item that I haven't gotten yet. That's that obstacle. Like it has the dumb purple spike things. I don't know how to get past them yet. And I need to get a power up to fix that. It was easy to recall to match up the map with what the location actually was. But because Metroid Prime, the map is 3D and it's much more complicated, in order to like recall mentally the rooms you haven't been into versus what they actually are, was more complicated. Basically, Metroid Prime is the Dark Souls of Metroid games. But yeah, that I found very, it's not frustrating, it's not even difficult, it's not even a bad thing. It's just like one of the interesting consequences of moving to 3D was being able to very quickly kind of internalize the map structure of a 2D Metroid did not carry over nearly as well into 3D, because not only is the map more complicated, it's also just like it's harder to realize things. Like there's a lot of times where there are ramps and I don't even notice they're a ramp just because like it's bigger. Like it's obvious where some of the ramps are, but you don't notice them right off the bat, where if there's like a ramp or something or an equivalent of an item thing that you need in Metroid, as soon as you come walk in the room, it's clearly visible what needs to be done there. So I don't know why I'm even saying this. Yeah, I guess I'm just a dirty casual. It doesn't bother me. I think that's something I need to make clear. I just wanted to bring this point up because it's something interesting I noticed about the moving from 2D to 3D, because that was my big concern going into Metroid Prime, was how much is going to change going from 2D to 3D. And the core game feel didn't change too much. The exploration, the opening the doors, the again, linear progression system that we all know and love, getting the power-ups that of course you're going to get. And they actually added a couple. The Phazon suit, that's new. Looked like an edgelord, very early 2000s aesthetic, the Phazon suit, but the Phazon suit's new, so I like adding new things. Overall, it's really good. And actually, another thing that Metroid Prime fixes that I complained about in my last Metroid game is that super missiles aren't a separate power-up. They're the charge versions of regular missiles. So missile tanks are way more important because they're your missile ammo and your super missile ammo. Very good idea, Retro Studios. Definitely makes missile tanks much more important than they were in something like Samus Returns or Zero Mission. Good job. Like that. 10 out of 10. I hope that carried over to Prime 2 and Prime 3 and Prime 4. Good idea, because missile tanks are the most common thing to find, so now that they actually serve a dual purpose instead of a singular purpose that quickly becomes irrelevant halfway through the game, way better. But yeah, Prime overall really works well. I'm looking forward to finishing Prime 1. I actually might try and finish it off tonight after recording the PCP. I'm looking forward to the other ones, but that's the interesting thing, is that the map becomes harder to recall mentally and kind of keep a mental model of the map because you're doing 3 dimensions now instead of 2. Not a huge deal. I would definitely like, as a solution to this, and hopefully pray that we'll be able to do this on Prime 4 on the Switch since it has the touchscreen. It'd be great if we could annotate the map. I think map annotations is a huge, great thing that's been added to a lot of these Metroidvania style games. I think Prime 4 would do fantastically well if we could add some annotations. The fact that I could drop markers on Samus Returns, 10 out of 10. Great idea. Loved that. I wish I could also write directly on the map with the stylus, though, to like say, point an arrow, this is this, so I could remember it later. That would help to kind of like combat the fact that there's this huge 3D map now, and it's more difficult to kind of remember exactly what was there and what you still need to do to get there. So, map annotation. Big deal. Should add it. Would like it. That's all I gotta say. Metroid Prime's amazing. If you haven't played it, go play it. I can't say anything about 2 or 3 yet. I'm pretty sure they're gonna be great, though. I guess I have to buy a Switch now, which kind of sucks because there's nothing else on the Switch I really needed. And I was like, maybe I can just skate by. Maybe I don't need a Switch. Maybe I can get through this gen just fine. But now I'm a Metroid Prime fan too. Fuck.